Hello and welcome back to my YouTube channel. My name is Noah, and in this video, I am going to share a few of my thoughts on this male loneliness slash male lack of ambition issue that I've been hearing quite a bit about here in the United States. For those of you who are not aware of this issue, or you haven't read about it in the media, whatever it is, basically the gist of it is that there's a huge amount of males here in the United States in their prime years for kind of getting your life set up, right? There's different age groups is kind of your prime for different things in life, and the age group, the age range that you're really supposed to take advantage of to kind of get your life set up, right? Get into a career and get your family going, etc., is kind of that age group that this issue kind of applies to. And the issue is that there is a huge lack of motivation to, get into a job, move out of your parents' house, start a family, and so on. And there are also, quite a bit of reports suggesting that a lot of these individuals, or just men in general, are quite lonely, right? They're lonely. They don't have many friends, or at least close friends. They don't feel like they have, much of a place, and so on and so forth. And so that is basically the gist of kind of how I interpret this male loneliness, epidemic, or whatever some people have called it, is that it's not just guys being lonely. It's guys feeling like they don't really have a place. They not having ambition. And really just not doing really what they should be doing. So in this video, I'm going to share, as a fellow guy, right? I'm going to share some of my thoughts as to what things kind of contribute or have contributed to why guys, not all guys necessarily, but some guys are in this position. The first reason as to why I believe we're kind of talking about this in the first place is that, generally speaking, media is best when it's negative. And I mean that in the sense of, not in the sense that we want everything to be negative, but in the sense that negative headlines generally get more clicks, right? Get more engagement. And the best way to basically stay relevant as a news reporting agency on social media, etc., nowadays is to get clicks, right? People watch ads, eyes come on it, etc., etc., etc. And the best way to do that is with negative news, right? Bad things happening. There was a shooting here. Some dude took a truck and drove it through this church, and this assassination here. Those are the kind of headlines that get the most traction here in the United States, probably around the world too. But we're only really focusing, on the United States here. And this is really not the fault of these guys, right? But we have, as humans, we kind of like we have this morbid curiosity. We like watching or hearing about the suffering of other people and thinking back to say, wow, I'm glad that wasn't me, right? Think of true crime documentaries and stuff like that, where, horrendous things happen to someone else. So we like watching about it. It's one of those things. It is a flaw, and it speaks to kind of our character, as people. But that's what's happening, in my opinion. There's this constant state of negative news, and I believe when the news kind of pertains to the struggles of guys, it can make them feel a certain way. So take, for example, you're a new grad, right? You're 24, 25 years old. You're looking for a job, but obviously right now the job market is pretty difficult, and it probably will be, to be honest with you. But you're looking for a job and you're having trouble finding one. Maybe you're getting rejections, or you're having an interview here and there, but then you don't get it. And in your free time, all of the news that you hear about is on, oh, guys not finding a job, guys not wanting to do this, guys depressed, guys this. That will ultimately affect you at least a little bit, right? And if that continues, if you keep getting stimulated by that kind of negative press, negative media, eventually it might get to the point where you do just start to believe those headlines and just give up altogether. So instead of these articles, this news in the media saying, "Hey, we know it's tough, but you got to do this. You got to keep going. Try this, try that." Instead of doing that and kind of trying to motivate these guys potentially, they're basically hammering home the fact that, hey, we know you're depressed. Look at all these other guys that are depressed. This is a big issue. End scene, right? Right then and there. And like I said, this is not good when you're already kind of in a tough spot and the media around you is just reinforcing that you're in a tough spot, and that's basically the reality. It can be demoralizing, right? It can kind of take away your motivation, your aspiration to get out of that situation. And I think that is a big contributor, pardon me, as to why so many young guys are in this boat. The second reason, or not necessarily the reason, but the second contributing factor to why I think guys are kind of down on themselves, not motivated, etc., is because of the media. I just mentioned media, right? Negative press around guys in general. I'm talking more about creative media, Netflix shows, TV shows, social media content, people following what influencers do, that kind of stuff. And I think what's happened over the last 15 or 20 years is that there is more content that is more along the lines of being flashy, exorbitant, over the top, kind of materialistic. And that's okay inherently, right? Because it's okay to want to do cool things and take trips and etc., right? That's all fine and dandy. However, I think what can happen is the position that the vast majority of guys are in the United States is not anywhere near what you're seeing on what's being shown on Netflix, on Hulu, on Amazon Prime, on social media, right? There's this disconnect, and that a lot of the content that girls like to consume from this influencer, from this show, whatever, is too over the top for what your average guy can provide to them. And I know there's going to be a lot of girls that say, well, I know that's not real, that's not real life, it doesn't affect me, whatever. It has to affect you at least a little bit, right? And it's okay to. But the reality is that guys know that they can't do that. The majority of like if you take just your average guy as far as like salary, job goes, because that's how we judge a person nowadays, they can't do that stuff, right? After rent, their car, food, your monthly or bi-monthly movie and some miscellaneous stuff, the money's gone, right? And I'm not even going to get into kind of like, I don't want to talk specifically about money in this, but the long story short is that the median income for guys in the United States is like just under $70,000. That is likely pre-tax, right? So you got to take taxes from that, and then you'd get whatever your take home is. After paying for the cost of just being around in society, there's not much money left over. And guys know this, right? The your average guys absolutely understand this. And they know what kind of content is out there, right? They know what kind of content girls are watching and consuming. And I think it's fair to say that a lot of guys look at this and say, well, I couldn't do this for them, right? So why would they want to settle with me, where I can take one trip a year, and well, I can't do that, or I could do one dinner a month, or maybe we go to Mickey D's twice a week. That's the reality. I think is that guys kind of get down on themselves because they know what girls kind of want, right? And they don't feel like they're able to get that for them, right? So from there, with that understanding, what's the point in, moving out, of my parents' home and taking on more debt with an apartment, or not debt necessarily, but more of an expense with an apartment. Why shouldn't I just stay here, and just kind of save some of my money, just do what I'm doing, And, I think that can kind of eat at them a little bit. I think that can play a part into this whole guys not wanting to pursue families, to pursue even girls even women in some cases, just because they don't feel good about themselves, economically in 2025. An important detail that I should mention that I didn't mention earlier is that I did read, at least I believe this is the case, where about 20% of males 24 to 35 are actually still living at home. The highest that number, I guess maybe that's a normal range that, statisticians look at, but it's the highest apparently that it has ever been. And so all of the points that I'm kind of talking about here, I think kind of relate closely to this, and kind of one can kind of lead into the other. The third detail that I want to talk about are video games. And you might be thinking, oh, that's kind of a weird take. But, just hear me out for a second. So video games have changed drastically since the N64 days, right? Just unreal. They are incredibly addictive. In some cases, they even add gambling aspects, like literal slot machine mechanics, to a game that is not a slot machine game, to add this layer of basically gambling, to add this layer of chance to keep people playing, to get points to gamble with. And they're flashy, they're loud, they're over the top. There's all this content that's being dropped, good or bad. They are extremely different to what they really started out as. The other aspect of games that I think doesn't get talked about too much is the aspect that they are their own ecosystem, right? These games, shooters, strategy, whatever, they're their own little world in this artificial plane, right, within our world. And I think what can happen with guys that are already depressed or not happy with, their job or, whatever it is, right? They're just kind of down on themselves. It's easy to find places to kind of retreat into. And these games can act as a different world, right? The same way movies do, right? Movies are an hour and a half to 2 hours, sometimes more, of a different world. They're supposed to make you forget about what's going on in your life and immerse you with these characters, and it's a really great experience. The issue is that your video games take up far more hours out of people's lives, I think, than movies do. And what can happen with these guys that are kind of in this precarious decision is that they can kind of find their identity in these games that they don't have in the real world, right? I hate the term an alpha, right? I hate the term. I think it's cringe. I really don't like using it. But if you think of what makes you desirable or an alpha in the real world, right? Just in life, it's, a good job, a good personality, you look good, you've got cool hobbies, you've traveled, you've got assets, maybe, so those are all difficult to do, right? Because, well, the first thing is that you need money to do all of them. And coming across money nowadays is actually relatively difficult, I think. And what makes you an alpha in a video game is you know how to kill people in the game, right? Not in real life, I hope, but you know how to kill people. You're skilled with this, you're skilled with that. You have this game knowledge. So if you take a guy, right, that is already kind of down on their luck, they're not happy, it's easy to see why they would want to put more hours into this game, this artificial environment versus the real world. Right? Because doing that stuff, becoming desirable in the real world is extremely difficult, right? It takes years, time, effort, struggle, you've got to sacrifice a lot, but you can maybe get there eventually. But with a game, all you need to do is sit in front of a screen, turn it on, start playing and playing and playing and playing, and you kind of develop this, not only a personality, but you kind of develop this presence in this game that you don't have in real life, right? You have a purpose potentially in this game that you don't have in real life. It makes you feel good logging on because you are important in this virtual world. And I think this is kind of a rabbit hole for guys because it can suck you in, to be honest, because different games are getting released all the time, right? So if you don't want to go into the real world, right, and get rejected or struggle or whatever it is, right, put yourself out there, and you want to retreat into these games, there's basically an endless supply of games that you can keep retreating yourself into. And what happens is over time, you don't get out of that cycle, and you have this identity within this artificial world, right? And I think this is, I don't think it's talked about that much. Obviously, games are extremely popular. They're very profitable now, especially in the mobile space. But I think this is something that kind of contributes to why, how you can take a guy that's unmotivated or whatever it is, and he can actually continue to go down this path of not really graduating from that and becoming more through the use of these make-believe worlds, these games. The last point that I'm going to leave you all with today is a little bit broad, but I still want to talk about it. And it is just the way that society is structured. And I know that is really broad. The points that I brought up before were, I thought, pretty specific, so I did want to incorporate one that was a little bit more broad. But the way that society is structured right now is just not easy, if I'm being quite honest with you, especially if you're trying to be desirable and you're trying to be someone in the world. I think it's very, very difficult to do so. Our dollars don't go as far, not nearly as far as they once did. Hence the reason why cryptocurrency is one of the reasons why cryptocurrencies are so desirable right now. But I think guys can feel this, right? You graduate from college, you get into a job, you start making real money, which isn't real money because it costs basically that just to be around, right? To have rent and to have a car. I think a lot of guys get a taste for this and say, I don't really want to deal with this. I'll still retain my job, but I do want to stay at home. I do want to stay at home and I'll still work obviously, but I want to do something else with my money because I know that if I'm out in the real world, I'll be broke, right? I'll be check to check, or I'll be negative potentially because I'll want to be doing stuff. So some guys, sit down and say, you know what, I'm just gonna choose this option. I'm just gonna stay home and save whatever I can, and we'll just kind of go from there. And I feel like that sentiment is actually extremely valid, right? Because at the end of the day, you do have to kind of look out for you, right? No one's gonna do it for you. But the issue with this is that as you stay home and just kind of get settled in there, that takes you away from the other things that you're supposed to be doing remember I mentioned certain ages are for different things, and that 25 to or 24 to 35 is really it's family stuff, it's marriage, it's a house, that's that period, right? But if you opt to kind of play it safe, or even you could even call it play it smart, that kind of takes away from the other stuff, right? Because if you're at home, how do you have a relationship, right, with someone? Are you all just going to hang out together? And it gets a little weird. I'm not going to talk about, that side of stuff, but it's not your house, right? It's not your place. So that kind of, in that sense, you may not even opt to go on dates or see people because you're like, well, even if I did, I'm home. What am I supposed to do with that? And of course, from there, the next step would be a family, a house, etc. But if you're already home and you're not meeting people, those become almost irrelevant, right? So once you get kind of sucked into that, it can be very, very difficult to go out there and make other stuff happen. Like I said, the main point in this is that the economy is very difficult, right? It's not a case right now where you can be two teachers and live pretty comfortably, right? If you're two teachers, unless you're teaching at either a private school or maybe a university, things are probably pretty difficult, right? And if you add a family in there, or you add a kid in there, whatever it is, you could probably say goodbye to a house. I mean, I'm speaking out loud, right? But generally speaking, I feel like that's the case. And I can say this a little bit just because, I have some experience with the real world, so to speak, right? This is my first house. So I've got the mortgage, I've got the bills, all the bills that are associated with it, all the maintenance, the food, everything. And I can tell you that the median income of 70,000, whatever it is not going to do much if I'm being, if I'm being quite honest with you. So I think generally, just society, the way that, our economic structure, job security, AI stuff is in place right now, it is not helping these guys that are already kind of down. It's not incentivizing them more. I think for humans, especially now with the way tech has, changed us and so on, I think motivation is almost difficult to come by. Like true motivation, I think it's very difficult to come by nowadays. And if you, have these guys that are already, demotivated, and you have all of these other pressures on them, these economic pressures and so on, it's what do you do, right? I don't think you can just jump out of your shell, go out into the real world, and try to do your best. I think that's it's a very difficult ask. But there you go. Those are a few of my thoughts on this whole, male loneliness, sad, unmotivated epidemic is what I've heard it called here in the United States. I definitely feel, for a lot of these guys, because I am a guy, right? And feeling like you're not good enough is probably one of the worst feelings that there is out there. So what can we do? I don't know, right? I guess we can at least start to talk about it, maybe in the way that I am, here, and try to motivate people that way. But if you have, any other thoughts, if you agree with me, disagree with me, and if you want to share any of your opinions, please feel free to leave them in the comment section below. I would love to read them. And of course, if you have stuck around this far in the video, thank you so much for tuning in, and I will see you in the next one.